When I moved out and started streaming in the late 2013, I it was one of the strangest, weirdest, worst, and also best times of my life because it was the first time I'd ever had decent internet. And up until that point, we had dial-up, we had high speed, we had various different speeds of internet. None of them fast, very very slow internet. To the point where, like, if I was playing Counter Strike or a Battlefield game or some multiplayer game with friends, they'd all download the patch, and I'd be like, "Well, I guess I'm gonna go do nothing for the next 3 days." Because the only time I can use the internet is when my mom isn't on the internet, and that's not a lot of time because everything gets too slow. So there was a very limited time where I could download stuff. So actually playing games with friends was a challenge. And me moving out, that completely changed that because it was the first time I had good stable internet. Because, when young guy moves out, what's the first thing you do is you get the fastest internet you can. And something I'd always wanted to do because I'd been on a couple of streams in 2011 with a couple friends back when we were playing a lot of Firefall. I think it was 2011. Anyway, I'm pretty sure he was streaming on early Justin TV, or I think it was just making the transfer to Twitch when we were doing this. But I remember being on some streams and really kind of liking the idea of it after watching a bunch of them, and then getting into it in 2013 in November, and actually starting to try to stream myself right when I was moving out. And initially, I streamed all kinds of things. I streamed first-person shooters. I streamed League of Legends. I streamed Binding of Isaac, many other things. All kinds of things. I remember just like watching Total Biscuit's WTF Is's and then just streaming that for a bit because he was doing a lot of like cheaper games at the time that like I could reasonably like just buy and stream. I remember streaming Ziggurat, which was a first-person shooter wizard run-based thing. It was actually kind of fun. It was like little randomly generated levels, and you get your boss. It was just like Binding of Isaac or any of that crap, but just like first-person wizard game. And I remember playing that, and actually like a couple people tuned in. It was weird. Like I think I'd been streaming at that point for like on and off for 6 months with a pretty big hefty break in the middle. I guess we're like early 2014 now, with a pretty hefty break in the middle. And people suddenly started watching. I had like 3, 4, 5 people watching. That was weird. And I remember going to my job at the time. There was this guy who goes by Blurry Z on the internet, who would show up at the place I worked at the time, which was McDonald's. He'd show up and he'd just be like, "Hey, like you've talked about the you've streamed," because like I cleaned the place. I worked night shift, and he would just show up and just talk to me because it was age or whatever, and we'd talk about video games and stuff while I was working. And he just was like, "Yeah, you should stream." I was like, "Duh, I worked so much." He's like, just do like what Lethal Frag's doing. Do a daily stream challenge." And I was like, "Yeah, maybe why not? Why not?" And he said that he'd been streaming and he'd do one too. Okay, you know what? Why not? Like, you've been messing around on YouTube too, and like let's do this thing. So we started a 30-day stream challenge in November, on November 14th, which is the day I'm recording this, but by the time you see this, it'll be the 15th. And we started streaming. And we'd like raid each other, but like raiding didn't exist on Twitch back then. Neither did hosting. None of that did. So, oh yeah, also because this was like pre-Amazon buyout days. When you streamed on Twitch, if you weren't partnered, you had a minimum of a minute delay. Sometimes like up to 2 minutes, and you also didn't get transcoding, so you couldn't stream at a high resolution at all. Even though the site was capable of that, you couldn't do that because half the people couldn't load your stream because like the connection to the servers was terrible for a lot of people, so it buffered like to all hell. Anyway, I'm just rambling at this point, but back in those days, when you were streaming, it was just gnarly to actually even gain a following. But when we started this 30-day stream challenge, it was kind of like this, okay, let's actually like take this shit seriously. So I was like, I'm going to beat this Ziggurat game. And I did. I did. I beat it on stream. I think like nobody watched it. And at a point, one of my friends who I used to play League of Legends with all the time was getting annoyed at the fact that I wasn't playing League of Legends with him. He's like, come play other things. I'm like, I want to beat this game. And like streaming was like the thing that got me back into single player gaming for quite a while because I hadn't played games like that for ages. What ended up happening was once I got like a very slow, usable, high-speed internet connection, I was playing games with friends. You know, I was playing Battlefield, I was playing Counter-Strike, I was playing free-to-play shit like Crossfire and Allegiance of Valiant Arms and RuneScape and Runes of Magic and all of that or shit. And stopped playing single-player games. I completely stopped. The only things that I stuck to were roguelikes, and I mean like Angband and ADOM, and Doom RL, and I would play those. Those were like the only things that really stuck, and I would just have them minimized and just have to be playing them all the time. And once I'd started streaming, I was able to get back into those because I was able to stream and also have, I guess, that immediate interaction with other people. I don't know what it was, but it was like this was the thing that was able to break me off of multiplayer games, which is weird to me, but also kind of interesting. Like it just mapped 1-to-1. And because the way I would play games anyways is I would talk at the screen, which is part of the reason I ended up in working with multiplayer games because I would just talk. I was also a much more angry person back then. Anybody who remembers me back when I started knows that I was not nice. But like as time went on, I went from streaming like single player games like that to I streamed Roller Coaster Tycoon one day for some reason. And this was at a time where one of the people who watched my streams would just post my streams in subreddits, and eventually they stopped doing it and I started doing it. And I posted my stream in the Roller Coaster Tycoon subreddit. And like 50 people showed up. Over the span of like, you know, a whole stream, but like I consistently had like 5, 6 to 10 viewers. And that was like, holy shit, there was people talking. I've been doing this for years. I don't even have a donation button. And people started talking. And then something crazy happened. I streamed that game. I just decided, I'll play through this game. Like, I'll just do that the way I normally do it. And I'll just start doing these missions. And I did. And every day I would post it on the subreddit. And eventually the missions got really fucking hard. But like, every day I had like 15 people watching, and eventually I made a donation button, and then somebody gave me $10. And it just kind of progressed like this. And the entire time in the background, I'm working full-time nights at a fast food restaurant that's an hour and a half away. So I have a 3-hour commute. So I'm streaming 5, 4, 3, 2, 5 hours a day, and busing 3 hours a day to this job, working full time, and then busing back. Eventually, I ended up moving to a different location, which was significantly closer. It was only about 45 minutes away, but it was grueling. And I did that up until about 2016 when Planet Coaster was coming out, because I was basically just streaming Roller Coaster Tycoon like 7 days a week. And I say that like I sound like a crazy person when I say that out loud to myself. I did play other games, but like a large majority of what I did was that. Like I played all of Grand Theft Auto 5 on stream, which is another insane thing to say. But I did that back when that came out on PC. I streamed all of Grand Theft Auto 5 because one of my viewers gifted it to me. Laser is still a friend of mine on Steam, which is nuts. And like that era of the stream is crazy to me now, looking back on it, because I was working 40 hours a week. I was streaming 40 hours a week. And I look back in my PayPal history, and I was making $30 a month. I don't know how I did it. I sure as fuck wouldn't have been able to do that now. I would die. Like, actually, with the state that my body is in, thanks to diabetes and other things, I would be dead if I tried to do that now. And it's crazy to me that I was able to do that with absolutely no real meaningful reward outside of just the gratification of streaming and building a small community. And 2016 kind of changed it for me because that's the first time I went to TwitchCon. TwitchCon was where I met the wonderful folks over at Frontier, and TwitchCon was where I met the Kerbal community, and TwitchCon was where I got to talk to people who I frequented the chats of. And TwitchCon was where I actually made some networking connections. And that changed kind of everything because a bunch of people started raiding me. And like big people too, like people like Das Valdez, the EJSA of the Kerbal community started raiding me. And it's how I met a lot of really cool people in the industry. And it regardless of if you've heard of any of these people, it doesn't matter really, but these are the people that kind of made me go, oh, you can do this. Maybe I can do this. Can I do this? And that was when I cut my shifts at my job down to 4 days a week and just went ham. And increased the number of hours that I was streaming extraordinarily dramatically. And this is probably, like, in long term, what killed my relationship with my ex. That's probably what did it. But I went from killing myself working full time and also almost working full time to just working overtime and working part time. Is really what I did, except it was all streaming. I didn't do YouTube at all in those days because in those days, all I was doing was streaming 10 hours a day. I took that consistency that I'd always had with my stream and I increased the number of hours. There was a point where, and I don't brag about this, and I don't think anybody should do this, I was doing a 24-hour stream every other week. I think I did that for, oh God, it was probably close to half a year, maybe longer. Every other weekend. Or no, it was every other Thursday into like Saturday, basically. I would stream. And sometimes I would go longer than 24 hours. There was a good couple times there where I was streaming like upwards of 30. Because I just kind of get this weird second wind after like 20 hours. I'm just like, I'll keep going. Why not? And in hindsight, like that's terrifying to me that I thought that I needed to do that. But the ironic thing is, to a degree, it worked. I've never, up until December last year, I was never a person who had any real success. Financially or statistically or in any real way. I was, like, by success, I mean like stability. I was just, I guess, successful enough that I could afford to live. And slowly cut my shifts back at my old job. But never explosively successful to the point where, like, I wasn't terrified of bills. Or, like, my immediate, like, stability and ability to survive doing this as a job. I never really had that stability or that belief that I could have that stability, so I always kept the job around. I finally got partnered in November 2018, and that was after I just quit my job. So I quit my job in spring 2018 on Twitch. And at this point, I was like trying off and on to do stuff on YouTube. I uploaded a bit here, I'd upload a bit there, but like nothing really stuck, and I never was consistent enough with anything. For a while there, I was archiving VODs actually on this channel, back in like the Roller Coaster Tycoon days. So if you actually go back in this channel's history, there's some pretty garbage shit on there. Honestly, I was pretty bad at streaming back then because I was constantly sleep deprived and put zero effort into it, and my girlfriend was always in the house, so like I was always distracted. It was not I don't think my streams were any good back then. at all. I don't think they got good until I quit my job. I think that was when I started getting decent at this. I think that's when I started learning. I think that's when I started. It took a long time, but calming down, and I think my anger got better. I think I've gotten, especially in the last like 3 years, but I've gotten a lot better at being a good person on stream, which is insane because I've been doing this for 10 years. I think that might be the first time I've actually said that in this video, and that's probably the title somewhere. But I've been doing this for 10 years. And there isn't archives of all of it. I didn't even turn VODs on, I think, for the first year because I didn't really think about it. But there's barely any archives of the early years. There's some, but there's not much. And when I go back and I look at it, I'm not impressed by a lot of it. I think I'm kind of a dick sometimes. But I know why when I look at it, because I know the state that I was in back then, and I know the headspace that I was in back then. And I look at where I am now, and I'm not always impressed with myself, but I can see where I've improved. And the quality that shows the quality of the content, the way I speak, the audio, the music, the literal, like right down to just how I present myself on stream, how I dress, how I look. I think I've improved in almost every way. Even if that's just me like kind of puffing myself up, I don't know, but that's how I feel. But the end of the roller coasters and like that kind of early era was when like the RimWorld Kickstarter happened, and I started kind of streaming that game a little bit because I had been trying to get into Dwarf Fortress ever since about 2009. Back in the roguelike days, I did try to get into Dwarf Fortress. But RimWorld kind of came in at the right time, I think, for me, because I needed something new. I needed to change. I was tired of the roller coaster thing. I couldn't keep doing that. Like Planet Coaster wasn't doing it. I was streaming a lot, but I fucking hated that game. Honestly, and there was a whole other era with a group of people that I was doing stuff with and podcasting, and like all of that was like while I was working about 3 days a week, and it wasn't working out. I wasn't able to do it. Moved into the RimWorld days, and those days were good. I had a lot of fun with RimWorld, but once you've played about 2,000 to 3,000 hours of a game, it doesn't matter how good the game is. There is a point with certain types of games where you've just kind of done everything. And I think that if I got into RimWorld later, or if it had moved on to where it is now earlier, I probably would have stuck with it. But there was a point where I just fell off of it, and I was just tired of playing that game. And it was at a time right after release for RimWorld, and my stream had dipped real bad. The relationship with my girlfriend was terrible, and I just kind of said, fuck it. I'm just going to do something different with this thing that's supposed to be my hobby. Maybe it'll just go back to being a hobby, and I'll just go get a job. And I'd accepted that. And then that was at a really bad point. Like, everything was just terrible for me at that point. And my ex moved out. And then my income got a lot better because I was extremely blunt with my audience. I was like, hey, guys, we're like a 50, 60 viewer stream. And I know I'm a Twitch partner, but like, shit, if my income doesn't go up, I'm fucked, is basically what I said at the time. And people stepped up, and like my sub count went up, not by a lot, but it went up. Like it went up by a good 40%. And it was like, okay, I'm making enough that it's about the equivalent of doing 30 hours a week. So maybe if I just work like 110 hours a week, I'll make enough. And I did, generally. I was doing utterly inane, absolutely absurd numbers of hours. But I did it. And then eventually, I started to push those hours back. I do not genuinely think I would have made it till now, actually, if Dwarf Fortress hadn't released when it did. I think I would have burnt out and given up, probably, because I was pretty close to the tail end of my rope. But I was making about $3 to $4 an hour, based on the number of hours I was doing, which was absurd. By the way, the like easily 10 to 15 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week is what I was doing. So the number of hours I was working, my glasses are crooked and it's driving me insane. Screw fell out of them and I need to get them fixed. But the number of hours I was doing was absolutely absurd. But somehow I made it. Dwarf Fortress announced its Steam version, and the numbers went up a little bit. And I started doing those Dwarf Fortress news videos because I did one about the announcement. And, you know, I'd been streaming the game for a couple of, like, almost a year and a bit at this point, on and off. Initially, it was, like, coupled with RimWorld. Like, I would do Dwarf Fortress one day a week. And then there was a point where I just kind of said, fuck it, I don't want to play RimWorld anymore. All I'm thinking about is Dwarf Fortress. I've wanted to properly learn this game for years, and I never got the opportunity to. This is the time, you know, hopefully Dwarf Fortress will be out in like maybe 2021, and then I'll be good, right? That was kind of my hope. And obviously it ended up taking a lot longer than that. But the excitement that I was able somehow to pull from this YouTube channel as it slowly grew, you know, initially, like when the news videos started, this channel had like 1,200 subs or something off of the lore videos that I used to do, that then kind of bubbled into more. And it was a very slow grind, and the pandemic made it worse. But eventually we hit this December of last year, and everything changed. I mean, I think the weirdest thing to happen out of all of that is people kind of actually know who I am now. Like, I think people always kind of, and I think this became very clear to me, especially at TwitchCon this year, people always kind of knew me. And I know that sounds really kind of narcissistic on the surface, but like, there was always people in the industry, peers, that recognized me because I've always been there. I've been like, oh, that's the guy. He's been around at a lot of other ones of these. I know that guy. I'm around like a lot of the remainder of OG Twitch, which was when I started participating in things. And now I feel like I know what I'm doing. I feel like I know what I'm talking about at events. I feel like I can present myself in a way that I'm okay with. And the entire industry has gotten away from me. And I feel old and kind of weirdly outdated. But at the same time, I feel like I'm only just having the best kind of success of my whole career. And I look at the calendar and I go, fuck. I didn't take this shit seriously for a really long time. In the time that I've been doing this. But from the point where I kind of started to take it seriously, and the point where things finally started to work after like kind of really giving things a good try, now it's just kind of this surreal, like, okay. Now it's two things. Previously it was just, oh, how do I stay above water and keep this thing going? And now it's, what do I do next? Well, more dwarves, more streams, more dwarf-like games, the occasional roguelike when I feel spicy, maybe a city builder here and there. Thanks, guys, for a real fucking cool 10 years. I just want to throw out a few quick thank yous to a couple people. There's definitely going to be people that I miss. But LRFLEW, Lewis, cheers, mate. By Eggman, Stoned Hobo, you know, all the OG mods, like, guys for sticking around, Audio Coaster. Martin, the guy who I crashed with during the Formula 1 race when I was barely paying rent still. And then like I feel like I owe him for that like week, but didn't even charge me rent. I had to just crash in his guest room and then go back to work. Like people are just so kind to me in this industry, and I don't know. I feel like I'm always kind of the weird loose cannon in the room, and I just kind of hide in the corner, do my thing. But at the same time, I've made some of the best friends I've ever had in my life. So thank you for the last 10 years. And here's to 10 more.